Good morning. Happy Sunday to you all. Welcome all visitors with us. Welcome. Glad you could be at Holy Family Cathedral. A special warm welcome to Shaylee and Catherine. I know, sorry for the mic issues. We're still getting it figured out. Hopefully soon, but you missed the name if you're all the way at the front. So we have being baptized today, Shaylee and Catherine. So welcome to the families for them, as well as friends that are with you. Welcome to this great day of the occasion of their baptism. Real quickly, this weekend is the weekend for the Catholic Charities of Eastern Oklahoma annual appeal. And so a lot of people should have received in the mail, I'm pretty sure there's a little thing about Catholic Charities. These are also in the ends of the pew, as well as at the front of the cathedral. Feel free to take one of these and fill it out to support Catholic Charities. You know, Catholic Charities is a great work of the church, particularly the one we have here in Tulsa. It is known as one of the top Catholic charities across the whole country. The work that they do to ministering to the poor, to helping them out in various ways, not just going and giving them food, but also helping them out, educate them, also very different opportunities for them. Even you're welcome to go and see the place, Catholic Charities. It's great facilities that we have in Tulsa. You can go volunteer there. The marketplace that they have, where actually the poor can actually go and shop. Not just giving a bag of food and say, here you go, but rather they can go and shop themselves. But also, if you yourself are needing any help, just know Catholic Charities is available for you. So you're welcome again to take one of these envelopes with you, fill them out, bring them back to the cathedral, put them in the collection basket the next few weeks, and we'll take those and get them to Catholic Charities. As we look at this gospel for this weekend, it's curious to ask, why did Jesus choose a widow for this gospel? Why was it a widow that he says in this parable is the one that's going to an unjust judge? Really, he could have chose really anybody. Anybody could go to this unjust judge, petitioning for something to happen, and the unjust judge then responding. But yet our Lord intentionally chose a widow in this parable. Really, what our Lord is doing in this parable by choosing a widow is that he is calling us to see the world through the eyes of the powerless, through the eyes of the marginalized. You got to recall what widows were like. What was the state of being a widow like back in the ancient time? A lot of time for them, it was that they were powerless. They were vulnerable in the ancient Rome. Even apart from that, just the women in general of the time of Jesus really depended upon the men in their life. They were dependent upon them. But then also, widows did not even receive the inheritance from their husbands after they had passed. A lot of times, that inheritance would actually go to, say, one of their sons or a brother of that husband. And so again, it kind of emphasized that the widows were very dependent upon the other men in their life. They wouldn't have anything to sustain themselves, any property or belongings. So you have to have that kind of frame of reference to understand Jesus choosing a widow in this parable. He is importantly, he's communicating us in this parable, or just as important in this parable is not just the aspect of it being a widow, but that there also is the unjust judge that is in it. It's not a parable just about the widow, but also with this unjust judge. And despite his personality described as being unjust, his flaw there, we still see him being moved to do the right thing towards this widow. That how he will respond to her, make this decision for her, despite his being unjust as it describes. He's moved to do that right thing for her. Many times, brothers and sisters, we can find ourselves in the same position as this judge, where we're needed to make a decision. It may not necessarily be, say, like a judicial decision as this judge is making, but there's many times that we're needed to make judgment on people's needs, on their trustworthiness, on their character, and how much easier that those decisions become for us when it truly is somebody that we know, when it becomes a family or a friend or somebody that we know, that we're much more willing to act such as this unjust judge, and we're moved to do the right thing for them. But when it comes to that unfamiliar aspect, how much less inclined that we are to do that. This parable is really challenging us in this dynamic to see the suffering, to see the distress, to see in this widow, again, that state of being a widow, to see all of that suffering, distress around us, and for then the possibility for us to have a caring response, to be moved to that response, such as the unjust judge was moved to do the right thing. Recently, Pope Leo came out with an apostolic exhortation, Dilexiti. If you have to translate it, it's translated as, I have loved you. I have loved you. Those words, that title of this apostolic exhortation, comes from the book of Revelations. If you look at the context of where that is being said in the Revelation, the Lord is speaking these words to a Christian community that had no influence, had no resources comparative to other communities, and was instead they were treated with violence and contempt. And yet you see the Lord, these words, saying to this very Christian community, being treated with violence and contempt, with no resources, with no influence, says the words, I have loved you. This exhortation of Pope Leo's is being addressed to all Christians. He's addressing it to all of us, to have a concerning love for the poor. In the very words of Leo in this exhortation, he says, love for the poor, whatever the form their poverty may take, is the evangelical hallmark of a church faithful to the heart of God. Let me read that again. In the words of Pope Leo, love for the poor, whatever the form their poverty may take, is the evangelical hallmark of the church faithful to the heart of God. What Pope Leo is saying is not anything new for church teaching. There's always been an emphasis to the poor, a preferential option to the poor, as we've heard before. But we see it in this parable today, in this widow, as we're being encouraged to see in this widow the suffering and the distress. And that we see in the response of this unjust judge, despite him being unjust, he still is moved with compassion towards this widow. And how it's challenging us to have that sort of reaction, that same response to love for the poor. Particularly for us here at the Cathedral, downtown Tulsa, we are pretty familiar with poverty around us. Now, we can disagree at times of how we are supposed to treat them, how we're supposed to actually help them out. We can disagree about that. But yet still at the heart of it is that we are still called to love them. Despite maybe the disagreements that we have, these disagreements is not an excuse for inaction, brothers and sisters. These disagreements of maybe how we ought to help the poor does not excuse me from inaction. Again, in the words of Pope Leo, in this exhortation, he says, works of mercy are recommended as a sign of authenticity of worship. These works of mercy are signs of our authenticity of worship, which will give praise to God, has the task of opening us to the transformation that the Spirit can bring in us, so it may all become an image of Christ and his mercy towards the weakest. Again, brothers and sisters, I say to us, this is not anything new. This exhortation we hear from Pope Leo is not anything new, but has always been an important aspect of the church, has been an important mission of the church. We are a people of prayer. We ought to be a people of prayer. And that prayer ought to lead us to love, where then that love really ought to lead us to action. Not to inaction, but to action. So brothers and sisters, let us be willing to serve the poor. Let us be moved with compassion for them. By serving them, truly we will be serving Christ.